Welcome back to the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. If you are new here, we are all about optimizing the performance and health of the ageless athlete. So we interview guests from all around the world of nutrition, medicine, performance. So if you're into that type of thing, please subscribe. In today's conversation with Scott Hagnes, we go over gut health protocols that we have used personally, all of our different gut pathogens and protozoas and yeast overgrowths and all that type of stuff. And we describe exactly what our symptoms were, how we treated it, and how we're feeling now. Guys, if you like today's podcast, make sure you subscribe, rate, review, share with a friend, and enjoy this episode of the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. Scott, how goes it?
Hey, it's going pretty good.
Excellent, brother.
Bad out in the blurry world here in Portland.
I like that, man. So we're going to get right.
Blurry.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get right into it today here, Scott. We're talking guts, man. We got a lot of things going on here. A lot of big things changing on my end here. And I know you're a fairly good resource when it comes to this stuff because you've done some deep dives on your own microbiota and digestion and all that kind of stuff in the past. And you're a great resource, not only anecdotally, but also you understand some of the research and that kind of stuff. And you've worked with plenty of different people in terms of improving their gut health. So right off the bat, Scott, I guess in the 5 minutes or less, what's been your experience in terms of, biohacking your own gut and like, what are the highs, lows, and learnings that you've gotten?
Yeah. So Cliff Notes version, probably always had pretty good digestion growing up and before I started hacking my health and things like that, outside of having terrible gas, which probably means that my gut health was actually not as good as I thought it was. But I didn't ever have stomach upset from eating things. I just, had terrible gas. So fast forward, as I was in the early CrossFit years, now back 20-ish years ago, I started following a lower carb diet, removing some of the common gut, things out. And, whether I felt better, I don't know for sure. The gas absolutely continued. That did not change no matter how low carb, no matter what I did. And I definitely developed some more food sensitivities during that time. Now, at the time I was assuming, I'm just used to these before. And now I'm really, I'm sensitive to them now because my system is so much cleaner. But come to find out, I was like, looking a little deeper, I decided to do a stool sample at some point with some testing. So I had a naturopath run the Metametrics stool, GIFX, I believe, specifically, if anyone knows that one. And I did have a parasite at that time. And what the other one? That's quite a while. It was probably over 10 years ago. So I went on a protocol. One of the things we did was, I believe, oregano oil for the parasite. And I will say that after doing that, my digestion and the gas definitely got better, not perfect, but definitely better. And then it was around that time that I decided to do very careful elimination diet, which I had never really done. I just kind of dove headfirst into the paleo thing, took a bunch of stuff out. I never really tested to see. And lo and behold, I found eggs were really the big problem for me personally. So that helped. And then I started, this is when I started experimenting with more carbs in the diet, went for a more metabolic, or bioenergetic perspective, which I've basically followed now for the last 10 years. And basically I pretty much don't have any sensitives to anything except eggs are the one food that I avoid. And that's basically been haven't really been interested in delving in much deeper just because I really haven't had any issues.
So in terms of your performance and just overall wellness, Scott, did you notice any kind of difference once you did get rid of that parasite?
I don't know if I could necessarily notice it in physical performance, but I definitely, less gas, bloating, less intolerance to various other things, which, like I said, at that time, I think basically because my body temperature at that time would have been so lowered from low carb and intermittent fasting and those things, I would not have had a lot of active thyroid hormone. With a low body temperature, you're going to have a lot more overgrowth, all kinds of nasties in the gut. And so it kind of stands to reason that in that case, I would have had those things. So how much of it was, eating differently after that, and how much of it was the parasite, it's hard to say. But I have had clients who have found similar on a test, and it was, really improved things quite a lot.
Yeah, the parasite. For sure. And that was going to be my next question. Obviously, walking through this fire on your own, you probably could then pinpoint when there were certain cases where you're like, hey, maybe we should look under the hood, maybe see a naturopath or some kind of MD or someone who has some kind of functional medicine background. So when you are working with a client who might be experiencing some symptoms, what are those symptoms and what's the next step from there for you?
Yeah, I mean, diet issues, a lot of food sensitivities is one kind of dead giveaway.
That's a great point.
It's a great, we should not have a lot of food sensitivities. And if you do, then there's something underlying, and you definitely want to root that out. But you as a strength coach or personal trainer really aren't going to be able to figure that out very well. So it's best to refer for some testing, I think.
I agree.
That's one. Simply a lot of gas and bloating. That certainly could be another.
Yep.
Inability to lose weight. So I think we've all had those clients, right, that they're putting in the work. You see it right in front of you, and you're pretty certain that they're, following good nutritional prescriptions, but yet there's just not a lot of change. Well, you got to start digging deeper. So those would be the top three off the top of my head where I would do that.
I agree with all those, Scott. And to corroborate what you're saying here, I think the biggest one is the stubborn weight loss peeps. As a matter of fact, I think I put it out. I didn't publish anything. I copied and pasted an article into a blog post. The scientists are actually being able to determine that there are specific bacteria within your gut that are resistant to or very carb centric, and they want carb, and they actually will prevent you from weight loss. So they basically took successful weight loss clients in a weight loss clinic, and they compared them to unsuccessful clients, and they looked at their microbiota, and they found that they had little germs in their gut that wanted carbs and made it harder for them to lose weight. Whereas those in the more successful weight loss groups actually didn't have those bacteria. So it lends to believe that there's something along here. I don't know what the extent is or the significance of it, but science is starting to catch up with this idea that your second brain is your gut. Maybe even your first brain is your gut. And that gut is made up of, billions and billions of microorganisms that will dictate what really goes on in your life.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I think, and let me know if you've ever heard this. Now, I read a lot of things, and I know I've saw this quite a while ago, but have you ever heard? So given, this fact has been known for a little while, and I believe there was a study done where they took and they did a fecal transplant. So they had this group of people on one side that had the bad bugs and couldn't lose weight, and then they had the normal weight, healthy folks that had the good bacteria, and they basically swapped their fecal transplant between them. So giving the thin people the fat loss resistant folks, bugs, and vice versa. And what they found was within a shockingly short period of time, I remember just like maybe a week or two, they were back to looking exactly like they looked in the first place. In other words, the fat resistant person had all their bugs back just like they had before, and the healthy, leaner person had all their bugs back to being good bugs. So potentially showing that it's maybe the terrain of the person, and the bugs themselves are more dictated by the terrain of the person. Have you heard this?
100% all over Google. So if you Google fecal transplant weight loss studies, there's a few studies that have been done and actually corroborate what you're talking about. There's my corroboration limit for the day in terms of saying that word. But yeah, absolutely.
I've heard that more.
No, but absolutely, Scott. And it makes sense. on a microbiome level. But when we look at this more upstream, you're constantly getting feedback from your gut. Your brain is constantly getting feedback from your gut. And I think science has always thought about this as just completely a hormonal or maybe neurotransmitter, or maybe it's just some electrical signaling. Specifically, there's the vagal nerve that basically goes from your stomach to your brain. So that's an electrical signal. And but we really haven't appreciated the microbiome yet in terms of what kind of feedback that can have. But anecdotally for me, I know that whenever my gut was feeling better, I would always lose weight, and not like wasting. It was always belly fat. It was always cortisol fat. You know what I mean? And that's always the most stubborn for me. I can be fairly lean all over the place, but it's just like a puffy inflammation type feeling around my belly. And again, like, vanity aside, it's more of like, man, like I know that it just felt like there's something underlying this that tends to be an issue. So that's actually a really good point. And I imagine there's probably a bunch of companies who are probably taking very high quality poop and putting it into capsules and shoving it in people's mouths at this point.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, exactly. But I know I think the only FDA approved fecal transplant toward general population is for C. diff. So C. diff is one of the more horrible, debilitating like gut issues that you can have. It's just an overgrowth of a gut pathogen, C. diff. It's a bacteria. And nurses always say that there's a particular smell when someone has C. diff, because like it's basically like the guts are like rotting out. And what their treatment option that's very, very successful is basically repopulating the gut from the bottom up with healthy gut bacteria that basically, causes the new bacteria to counteract the C. diff, that overgrowth. And again, like, people get freaked out about like E. coli and all these other things. And like a lot of these things are already in your gut. It's that you start getting dysbiosis, you get like imbalances in the gut, and all of a sudden that benign E. coli all of a sudden just runs rampant, and now you have this overgrowth, and all of a sudden it's going to play issues on the rest of your gut biome, which then throws off your entire system.
Yeah.
So that leads us into my own stool analysis, comprehensive stool analysis. I have it here. We went over with it last week with Dr. Peter Kozlowski, who's a functional medicine doctor and is an MD out of Illinois. And also he practices out of Montana, Bozeman, Montana, I believe. So comprehensive stool analysis, this was from doctor's data. So it's comprehensive stool analysis and parasitology. So we got all the types of things here. So just to kind of give you the Cliff's Notes of that, I had low good gut bacteria. So they're going to basically measure your good, your intermediate bacteria. Like sometimes they could be bad, sometimes they're good, depending on like how much of it is. And then like bad gut bacteria. There were no bad gut bacteria, but it was low good bacteria. So that's not good. But then there was Candida. So that's a yeast that can grow. And that thing is very invasive for some people. I've heard people like deal. I remember like back in like the Rob Wolf podcast days when he talked about Candida on a pretty regular basis, and he would say like, dude, that's just like a nightmare to deal with because it's just very invasive and tough to get rid of. So of course I had that. Then I had two pathogens, or excuse me, two protozoa. In many blastocystis, and then the other one was Entamoeba hartmanni. And those two, if you look them up online, the World Health Organization says that they're fairly benign and you don't really need to treat. But the way Dr. Kaz said is like, listen, I treat them. He goes, I rarely see them, but when they do, I see them, I treat them. And for those, and then the yeast, there's specific protocols that you can do, but I'll start with the yeast. For the yeast, if you do have an overgrowth of yeast, they're going to culture it and they're going to see what kills it. And, that gives you an idea of like what you can treat it with. So, you can treat it with berberine, cyprulic acid, allicin, which is garlic extract, uva ursi, oregano oil, right? undecylleic acid, grapefruit seed extract, nystatin, fluconazole, itraconazole, and then ketoconazole. And those are obviously antibiotics. So the top ones are herbs and oils. And interesting enough, Scott, the allicin and the oregano oil had no effect. And when I did my SIBO protocol, those were the two biggest things that I was consuming, and I was getting some effect from it, but maybe it was the bacteria and not the yeast. So my current protocol that I'm doing is caprylic acid, berberine, glutamine, and then there's a couple other things that I'm doing, which are and this protocol is actually done on a 3 time a day basis. So 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night, and then following it up with a Saccharomyces boulardii, which Scott, you know well of because you put me on that long ago. So Biosid, which is like a broad spectrum, anti-parasitic and antifungal. It has a bunch of like essential oils and that or not essential oils, but like oils that are antibacterial. And then the last one was berberine, L-glutamine, caprylic acid, the Biosid, and then at night, this is the key. So you kill all your, the bad bacteria during the day. Then at night, you take the Saccharomyces boulardii. Because you take the Saccharomyces boulardii along with your antibacterial herbs, you're killing the Saccharomyces boulardii. So right before you go to bed, you hit the Saccharomyces boulardii. So that's the anti-yeast protocol that we chose. My fiance Lauren is going to be doing the nystatin, and nystatin is a anti-yeast. Which supposedly is actually really, really safe for consumption because it doesn't actually go into your bloodstream, into your body. It stays in the gut. So it doesn't pass the gut barrier. So very, very safe to take. So she's going to go that route. I was just doing this one because I chose to do that. But then the other one was to get rid of the parasites. And that's where we did the metronidazole. I think this is what you call it. And specifically what I had to do was 750 milligrams 3 times a day for 3 days. So that's a big old bolus of antibiotics, and it did not feel good. After the first day, I had such a brain fog.
The die-off.
Yes.
Herxheimer reaction.
That's exact. Say more about that, Scott.
Herxheimer reaction. Yeah, you'll get this die-off, when you're typically something from the gut can be any sort of pathogens and things, and it can make you feel really pretty lousy, kind of like you have the flu potentially, endotoxin uptake. So
say that the name of it one more time, Scott.
Herxheimer reaction.
That's a good one.
You can fire that into the search engine and see what you see.
Yeah. So that was that. I felt that Lauren, after taking it in the morning, was nearly catatonic. She couldn't, she was non-responsive, like sitting there, like crying, non-responsive. And I was like, are you okay? And just like, couldn't talk back. And I was like, okay. So like, we just chilled for a while, and I emailed the doc, and he actually got to me, Dr. K got back to us right away. And he's like, all right, discontinue if this continues. And, so it was first thing in the morning. So she really wasn't eating a lot. So we did it one more time. I said, listen, if this happens again, we're 86ing this. And it was not quite as bad, but my mind went directly to the die-off of the bacteria or those parasites, like a huge bolus of endotoxin that like endotoxemia, basically your blood just got dumped with these endotoxins. Yeah.
Wow. That is wild. Yeah.
And definitely something really scary. But on the back end of it, I think my digestion has improved a lot, like a lot less gassiness. My poops are better and consistent, not like, one or two, like good. I think I'm sleeping deeper. After the last day of the antibiotics, I was so tired, and like almost groggy tired. And I haven't been like that in quite some time. So I think part of it is the die off of the parasites, but then also, just obviously the antibiotic, and then right back on to
I'd imagine a pretty heavy immune activation.
Yep. So I got right back into my Saccharomyces boulardii to kind of start, reinstigating some good gut health. That's the gist of it. I'm going to stay on the herbs for another probably month or so to really combat that yeast overgrowth again. But the other thing that he mentioned was like, if you don't, the biggest indicator that I had poor gut health is secretory IgA, which is basically the immune system of your gut. And mine was like, so it's on a scale of like 30 to 300. Mine was like a 12. So he's like, you have all these parasites in your gut. Why isn't your gut immune system kicking on? It's because it doesn't exist. So he's like, we gotta work on getting rid of these pathogens, but also the next level of this is toxins. So I'm going to do a heavy metals test. I actually just sent it in as a urine analysis, and then just like calming down, all sorts of practices like that. But the secretory IgA is the big one. If that doesn't kick back up, I'm SOL.
Yeah. Did we test that earlier back in the day?
Nope.
Because I know that, a lot of
probably
people
didn't have the
doing,
means, maybe.
Yeah. A lot of people were doing labs, probably based on symptoms and the fact that almost everyone that was going and getting tested, that this would have been when you would have been doing competitive CrossFit.
Yeah.
Like that secretory IgA was almost rock bottom below the chart for virtually everyone that it. Yeah. So, we probably just assumed that would be the case.
Yeah, and we're just like, all right, let's get this back in order when we're done with CrossFit, and that's kind of what I'm doing now, right? I'm pretty much done with all that stuff. So, that's the story. I know that's And
I forget what mine was quite low on that test. I will maybe next week we can lead off. I can't. I have it somewhere. I couldn't pull it up right now, but I'd be curious to see what parasite I had in comparison.
Yeah, man, we'll have to compare.
I recognize these names. Parasites. I just don't recall what I had.
Yep. Awesome. So if you guys want to learn more about your parasites and potentially how to make some conservative measures to repair them, Scott, how can we get a hold of you?
You can reach out to me, Scott Hagnes Training on Gmail, or Scott Hagnes Training @Gmail is email.
Excellent. And if you're doing at-home or virtual personal training, I'm your guy, flochfitness.com, Floch Fitness on all the socials, and Sean at flochfitness.com if you want to shoot me an email. Scott, let's toast to our bacteria and our parasites, and I'll see you next week.
Yes. Toast to the bugs.
All right, brother. I'll see you next time.
See you then.
Later. Thanks again to listening to today's podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend, leave us a review of 5 stars. It helps grow the podcast more than you know. We will see you next time with a brand new episode of the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast.